Do you know why bees are important?
Do you know how they help us?
Do you know how a decrease in plant biodiversity can affect them?
The following are foods made possible by bees.
Buzz.
Be helpful and let us learn. Love.
Pomegranates. Beans for life. They're healthy.
Tomatoes.
Veg oil. Oh, coffee. The bees care it for you.
Bees. They're not talked a lot about, but they're really important. Throughout this video, you have already witnessed a few foods that bees make possible. You'll also see how humans have a negative effect on the environment, how bees are important, how a decrease in plant biodiversity has a negative effect on the populations of plants and bees, and you'll also understand energy flow, matter cycling, how organisms interact with each other, and how humans can help. Many things that humans do affect bees, but they also affect the amount of plants around the world, decreasing plant biodiversity, which means less variation in ecosystems of plants. When humans build dams, for example, the water has to go somewhere, and all the water destroys habitats, including plants. Cars, factories, and other things cause global warming and climate change. Humans have a balance in the ecosystems, which they have passed, and we are experiencing exponential growth, which is when a population is getting bigger and bigger because they are not having the limited factors needed. The limiting factors are something that keeps the population in check and from growing exponentially. Sooner we hit dynamic equilibrium, which is a stable population number.
These are some reasons why plant biodiversity has been decreasing, such as
One reason is climate change.
¿Qué pasó? Destruction of plants' habitats for the economy.
Burning of trees and plants.
Destruction of plants because of human activity.
Oh yeah, I got a flower. Oh yeah. Do you eat food?
Question is a no-brainer. Of course it is. 1/3 of our food is pollinated dependent on bees. Bees pollinate 70 types of crops, which not only do they give us food, which is pretty important, I guess, but they also create $24 billion to the U.S. economy. Now it's time to get cereal. Welcome to another day on the Environmental Channel. Today we are having a special guest, Deanne, and her pet bee, Bazilla.
Hi, I am Jan, and this is my pet bee, Bazilla.
Buzz.
Today we are talking about decrease in plant biodiversity and how bees are involved.
So how are y'all today?
I'm good.
Horrid. I've been trying to pollinate, but it's been hard. You won't believe how hard it's been.
But why?
To be honest, the areas where I pollinate have decreased.
So why has it been decreasing?
Many things like parasites, pathogens, and climate change.
Humans also have a play in the decrease of bee pollination, such as bee-killing pesticides and the industrial agriculture. Pollution and tearing down of habitats has made a decrease too because of the unhealthy environment.
Why is how you pollinate so important?
Because when we pollinate, we create successful harvests and make the crops that you humans eat.
How does the way you pollinate and create the food affect the rest of your population?
The variety of plants are decreasing, giving us less food and making us travel longer distance in order to get food.
Well, I want my food. What impacts do you think the decrease of biodiversity will have on the environment?
I think it'll make a worse appearance on climate change, and eventually the sources of water will become unlevel.
Why do you think that?
Because we need sources of water to survive, and we can't have that unless climate change was constant.
Do you think the decrease of water source due to the climate change will be the only thing humans will face?
No, humans are also affected by the differentiation in food chains. Medicines and other resources that we rely on and that rely on plants may also begin to disappear, which will affect us.
Thank you for watching the Environmental Channel today, and thank you, Deanne and Bazilla, for being on this episode.
Buzz.
Anytime.
Here's an energy pyramid, and this will explain energy flow better. It starts off with primary producers, which get their energy through photosynthesis. and they start off with 100% of the energy. And then you have primary consumers, which are herbivores, and they get their energy from the primary producers and get 10% of the energy. Then you have secondary consumers, which are omnivores and carnivores, and they get 1% of the energy. Then you have the top carnivores, or which the tertiary consumers, and they get 0.1% of the energy. That
Nitrogen cycle is when nitrogen is converted into different chemical forms and it circulates into the atmosphere, ground, and ocean. Bees connect to the nitrogen cycle because once the nitrite converts to nitrates, plants use it as fertilizer, so then nitrogen is introduced into the bee's pollen. So here we have the ripe anther touching the bee, which makes the pollen stick to it, and when it reaches another stigma, it connects to the bee and touches it because of the pollen.
This is the hydraulic cycle, and the same thing as water cycle. One step in it is evaporation. This is when water is turned into water vapor. Then this condenses and creates clouds, and transpiration occurs. Then precipitation occurs when the clouds get too heavy and gravity takes over, and a form of water runs off of the clouds. Then you have runoff, which is when water runs off from a higher peak. You also have surface flow and transpiration is when water is evaporated from plants. You also have plant uptake, which is when the roots of a plant takes in water. You also have infiltration, which is when water is absorbed into the soil, and you have groundwater flow, which is when the ocean gets too full and some of the water goes into the ground. Without this water, plants wouldn't be able to grow, and bees wouldn't be able to carry out their pollination duties. This would ultimately disrupt the food cycle and the reproduction of plants.
The phosphorus cycle is a process in which phosphate is carried throughout the lithosphere, hydrosphere, and biosphere. Bees connect to the phosphorus cycle because once the plants absorb the organic phosphate, bees consume it through the pollination process. So first, it starts in the rocks and soils, and the phosphorus is carried throughout streams, and whenever the flowers absorb it, they absorb organic phosphate. So then they absorb the organic phosphate, so whenever the bees consume it, they consume it through pollination.
This is the carbon cycle, and the carbon cycle is used to regulate the amount of carbon in the Earth's atmosphere and to redistribute it. Some examples of how the cycle works is photosynthesis, organic carbon, animal respiration, plant respiration, dead organism and waste products, fossils and fossil fuels, and auto and factory emissions. This is all gathered by the energy from the sunlight. In the carbon cycle, they pollinate plants and fodders to keep the carbon distributed back into living things. This connects to bees because without the plants, there would be nothing for them to pollinate.
Symbiosis are things like mutualism, commensalism, or parasitism. Competition is when an organism competes for a different resource.
Here are two bees competing for the same territory for their queen bee.
Predation is when they hunt each other in order to get their supplies. Here you have a tick biting a dog. The tick is getting benefited because he is getting blood from the dog, and the dog is getting harmed. Cooperation is when two organisms support each other. Here we got two organisms sharing food.
An example of cooperation is when worker bees help each other out with getting honey and protecting the queen bee.
Mutualism is when two organisms benefit each other. There are two bees pollinating flowers. Commensalism is when one benefits and the other one does not get harmed or benefits.
Here you see a bird on a rhino's back. The bird is getting a place to sit, but the rhino is not getting benefited or harmed.
An example of commensalism is when farmers get honey from the bees. Organisms are interactions with the environment throughout the niche. Niches are organism roles, or how it makes its life like job. This includes what types of foods it eats and which other species use the organisms as food.
Some ways humans have a negative effect on the environment are things like use of too much plastic, cars, lifestyle, increase in farmland, and here are some ways to fix it. People can start protecting ecosystems by preventing deforestation. They can help learn about why it's bad and spread the word so others will consider helping the problem as well. They can help slow climate change. They can also not pollinate or create so much gas so that the environment can stay strong and healthy for the organisms.
Now it's time for the recap of all the things we learned today.